welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records in alphabetical order like a big nerd and talk about why I love them by myself. The album that we're going to be looking at today is a doozy. It has been certified platinum 26 times. It's been on basically every iteration of the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Time lists. It did not win Album of the Year, but that's only because it came out in the same year as Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. So that wasn't gonna happen. But the song that we're looking at today did win Record of the Year at the 1978 Grammys. Obviously the album I'm talking about is Hotel California by the Eagles. Oh, what's this? Comes with a poster. Lucky me. It sounds like this. Oh, I love that one. But clearly and obviously, the song that we're going to be listening to today is the title track, Hotel California. How can you do Hotel California and not cover Hotel California? I ask you. I'm gonna have to be so careful today because the Eagles are notorious YouTube blockers, which means that they have a literal staff of 60 people who work tirelessly to make sure that people like me don't play their music on the internet and say nice things about it. So I would love to play longer clips than I'm going to be able to play today, but the Eagles won't let me, so you can take it up with them, and seriously, please do, because I think I speak for a lot of music YouTubers when I say that we really enjoy sharing good music with people, and it would be so much easier to do that if these legacy acts would let us and not try and make us take our videos down if we use too much of their music. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now and let's talk about some music! Just quickly before we do though, let's have a closer look at this cover. It opens up to this room full of people, and then on the back cover it's the same room but it's empty, which I really enjoy. I think it makes it a little bit sinister and eerie. There's a janitor who is like cleaning up after the party. There's a bottle of champagne on the table, dying flowers. It's also kind of eerie that everyone in the picture is staring at you. It makes you feel very vulnerable and exposed. The photo is of the Beverly Hills Hotel, a haunt of famous Hollywood actors and rock stars. The Rat Pack used to get trolleyed in the Polo Room, a thing that they were famous for, apparently. This cover was designed by the same person who did the covers for Who's Next by The Who, and none other than Abbey Road by the Beatles. Interestingly, the hotel threatened him with a cease and desist for having used this cover. This guy's lawyer pointed out to the hotel that their booking requests had tripled since the release of the album, and they backed off. So we get this very cool, very evocative album cover. Right, now it's time to talk about music. First thing to mention about this song is that it takes its time. You know, like, it is in no hurry. First time we run through this chord sequence, it's just acoustic guitar and bass. The second time we're gonna add a little electric guitar, so it's a little bit different from the first, but otherwise it's pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, so there's this electric guitar that's going. And I think they've added a phaser as well, and it kind of goes like. I can demonstrate that better. Here's what a phaser effect sounds like. Thank you, guitar correspondent. I'm sure that is the last we'll see of you this episode. The song is based around a very specific chord sequence. With the exception of the chorus, it just loops around that one chord section. The piano correspondent will now show you what that chord progression is, in case you've been living under a rock and you're not familiar with it. No offense to those of you living under rocks. I'm sure it's very peaceful under there. Sometimes I wish I could live under a rock. Some people have described the feel of this chord pattern as flamenco, which I can definitely see, especially when you listen to the last chord in the progression, because that pattern seems to come up quite a lot in flamenco music. Here's an example. Continuing our aside on chords, the way that chord structure is arranged, the end loops perfectly back into the beginning. It's a sort of song that never ends. And I'm really sorry if that song is now stuck in your head.
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. That's enough, guys!
Which is kind of fun because, in a way, as the listener, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And the song actually ends on a fade out anyway, so it does actually never end, it just sort of disappears into the distance. I'd love to show you what I mean about the chords looping in a bit more detail with this song, but the Eagles really don't want me to, so I'll use Ray Charles as an example because he's a little bit more charitable. And a little bit more dead. Because Ray Charles was a pianist, we're going to go back to the piano correspondent who's going to talk to you about what I'm talking about when I say that the song loops perfectly. Well, hello there. These are the chords of Ray Charles' Hit the Road Jack, in the same key as the Eagles' Hotel California.
I guess if you said so, I never have to take the thing and go.
The last chord wants to come back to here. It wants to resolve. I'm sure this is great for my neck. It doesn't sound finished when you end it here. It sounds finished when you end it here. So the song just keeps looping. If you ended it here, at the end of the phrase, it would sound like this. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back, no. I'm not going to resolve it so that you can sit with the discomfort. Back to you! That chord pattern makes the song sinister but also seductive, because at the end of every phrase, you get sucked back into the beginning. It just draws you further and further into the song. And as I said about the song taking its time, this is a 6.5-minute song, and it's worth every second, I think. It's a little bit difficult to appreciate this song in the way that I might appreciate some of the others, because it is so ubiquitous. It's playing at the supermarket. It's on the radio all the time. You hear it at parties. Every cover band has it in their set. My cover band used to have it in our set. So I really enjoy doing things like this because it means that I can step back from its place in popular culture and appreciate it for its musical value. I hope that you're getting the same thing out of it because it sort of revives the song in this very pleasant way. A thing that is easy to forget when you hear this song everywhere is that the story of the song is paramount. It is what the entire song is based around. I'll come back to the lyrics briefly, but the way that this affects the music is that the arrangement doesn't sound empty, but it is a little bit sparse. Each of the instruments is giving breathing space to the lyrics so that you can clearly listen to the words, which are being cushioned by the instrumentation. When all of the instruments come in at the top of the verse, we don't get some sort of like fancy drum flourish. We get this. That's a cool way to start a song. Boom! Boom! I was listening to the drum part last night. The kick is basically just playing on the 1 and the 3. So instead of going like boom, ba, ba, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4. So really the only sort of unusual or interesting thing that we're getting on drums is the hi-hat here. We're getting a little triplet. Please don't sue me, Eagles. We've got a very simple, very cool, laid-back bass part that does this. This bass part could be so much busier. It could go, for instance, but instead, it's giving airtime in between the phrases so that you can hear the words. Airtime. He's not playing continuously. Sometimes I pick up the bass and I'm just like, this is fun, and I forget that I'm recording a video. So yeah, I think that sort of borrows from reggae a little bit, where there's plenty of room in the bass parts, there's plenty of room in the guitar part, and both are also serving as rhythmic agents. The bass is landing on an offbeat, which means that it's landing in between the downbeats. So if the downbeats of the song are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you notice how it stops in between the claps? That's a cool thing. This washing machine, so that gives it this sort of like off-kilter rhythm, but the guitar is doing the same thing because, pardon me, I have the bass, so I'll get the bass correspondent to do this. We've still got that 12-string guitar coming through, but the electric is doing this. We're not actually playing any chords, it is actually just a rhythmic instrument in this instance. And that's all the guitar gets to do for the entire song. It's really not a very guitar-heavy song. Or is it? Because of that sort of looping structure, it is actually quite a repetitive song. There's no middle eight, it's just verses and choruses and verses and choruses. And of course this kind of works because it's primarily a storytelling song. However, so that it doesn't get boring, there are these increasingly intricate, layered, harmonized guitar parts that come through, these fills that come through in the verses, like this. There are none in the first verse. After we have the first chorus, we have them playing in the background here. Lovely. Towards the end, they really start to take a life of their own and show off their personalities a little bit. That makes everything really interesting. And then in the last verse, everything hushes down. We're basically back to the beginning. There's bass, there's 12-string guitar, there is actually drum this time, but it's hushed. It grabs your attention, something important is happening. Listen. And then everyone comes back in. So at that point we've brought back in the wow, 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 and the wow, wow, wow. So we've got like two layers of two guitars. We've got double harmonies happening at the same time doing different things. It's almost like they're building to some sort of climax or something. Let's talk about the lyrics. Enough hinting about how it's a story song, let's talk about the story. This song was truly a collaborative effort in that the music was written by Don Felder and then the story was written by, what's his name? Don Henley, who is the drummer. And then the lyrics based on that story were written by Glenn, surname I don't know how to pronounce. I think it might be Frey, but it could be Fry, but it's probably Frey. We'll just call him Glenn. We're on a first name basis, despite the fact that they won't let me talk about their music on the internet. I watched an interview in which Glenn said that that when they sat down to write the lyrics, they wanted it to open like
an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Or like a movie, so they wanted it to be cinematic. And because of that, so much of the lyrical content of the song is descriptive. It is very image heavy, it's very visual. So like, on a dark desert highway, cool wind through my hair, the smell of colitas rising up through the air. So we can see the highway, we can feel the breeze through our hair, and we can smell the colitas. They have built a scene that we are using all of our senses to experience. I think the song is some of the Eagles' best lyric writing. My head grew heavy and my sight grew dim, I had to stop for the night. So it's the same sort of compulsion that we have when we listen to the song. We are drawn to the song, the singer is drawn to the hotel. Nice. We go in, we're not sure how it's gonna go. It could be heaven or it could be hell, we are told. We've met a lovely lady who has a lot of pretty boys she calls friends. And finally, as we get towards the end, we've got mirrors on the ceiling, pink champagne on ice. They gathered for the feast. So there is a group of people here. And some sort of luxurious party is taking place. Except, they also say, we are all just prisoners here of our own device. So there are all of these little unsettling lines in the song, like this could be heaven or this could be hell. We're all just prisoners here of our own device. Some dance to remember, some dance to forget. What a nice surprise, bring your alibis. There's something sinister about this place. A little interesting piece of trivia about the song is there's a nod to Steely Dan. And that is there because Steely Dan on their previous album had included this line. I don't don't think that it was a rivalry or anything. In fact, I think Glenn, my buddy Glenn, mentioned that they actually took a lot of inspiration from Steely Dan when they were writing this song.
We were always quite amazed that Steely Dan was so brave lyrically. They had lines in their songs that we would sort of looked at ourselves and says, whoa, would we have put that in one of our songs?
Because Steely Dan really got into the nitty-gritty, dirty places and described unsavory characters. So they wanted to do a similar thing with this song. I think they succeeded. They're perhaps not as erudite as Steely Dan, but you can't out Steely Dan, can you? What I love is that Hotel California, from my interpretation and also backed up by some of the things that the songwriters have said, is a symbol for what Los Angeles high life was like in the mid to late 70s. From what I understand, there was a lot of white powder going around at the time. There were a lot of glitzy parties, there was a lot of glamour, there was a lot of dancing to forget, there was a lot of imbibing to forget, as far as I'm aware.
We were in a position where we could do anything we wanted, so we did.
One of the Eagles described this song as a journey from innocence to experience. The Eagles were not actually from California. They moved to California from other states. The band began when two of them were recruited to be in Linda Ronstadt's backing band.
Glenn Fry and Don Henley, I met them at the Troubadour Bar, and they just be needing a gig, you know.
So it is pronounced Fry. How about that? And they thought, well, this is nice, let's form our own band. As an aside, they actually only played live with her once.
It's funny, I seem to get people at a sort of critical stage in their development.
But the band is her backing band on her debut solo album. So if you want to hear the Eagles before they were the Eagles, have a listen to Linda Ronstadt's debut album. So you've got these out-of-towners who come to California, they're exposed to the high life, they take lots of, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name the drug on YouTube, so they take a lot of the white powder by way of their nose.
This was a f***ing blast. You know, I was living the dream.
When he says you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave, there's the sense that you have entered into this lifestyle and you can never go back to how it was before. You can never regain that innocence. When you take that very autobiographical story and you render it in this cinematic light, and to that you add this like eerie, sinister chord progression, that makes it such a good song. It creates this perfect package. It doesn't need anything else. That's it for me. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm kidding, of course. They deliver us this, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You're like, whoa, a plot twist. And before you have time to process this plot twist, boom, they hit you with the greatest guitar solo in rock music of all time. So voted by the readers of Guitarist magazine in the late 90s. This solo takes up a third of the song, and again, it deserves every second of it. When Don Felder sat down to write this song, he said that he had in mind a piece of music that was written for two guitars. These are the two guitars that they ended up playing it on. I've heard this solo described as dueling guitars, but that's not how I see it. I see it as a much more sort of beautiful collaborative effort. One of them makes a statement, and the other elevates that statement by borrowing from the language of this one and elaborating on it, and then they meld together and they take us out on this until it fades off into the distance. I mean, you can't tell me that that's a duel. That's a marriage. It's poignant, but it's also filthy. It perfectly fits the mood of the thing. It's so good. I'm not doing this justice. Let's get the guitar correspondent in here.
Please note, I am nowhere near a strong enough guitarist to do this solo justice, but I give it my best shot and have a marvelous time besides.
This solo is, in my view, just as important as the rest of the song, because a good solo is not just notes that sound good next to each other. One of the ways that you can tell a good soloist from a not as good soloist is that they will play everything at 100%, or they'll be doing lots and lots of fills and there's no breathing space. A good solo is not just a lot of notes or fast notes. It's a language. Let's take the very end of the first verse of the solo, if you will, which goes like this. If you just played the notes, it would sound like this. See, it's not about the notes. The notes are sort of just the words. The reason that this is a great solo is that these two guitarists are speaking a language fluently. They are taking these words and sculpting them into poetry. Taking that as an example, it doesn't sound like they're doing much, but the way that they play each of the notes is a conscious decision. So for example, instead of playing, he's playing, and that makes the guitar sing. Even those little bits at the end, like that little bit of vibrato here and there, there's a lot of vibrato on the bit that goes. Just that little touch of vibrato makes it sound a little bit better than if you just played it straight. However, he's chosen not to use a vibrato at the top of the bend. He just holds it straight, whereas at the end, there's a really pronounced vibrato there because he's finishing the phrase. The first time it's in the middle of the phrase. And the deciding to bend instead of playing, these are all decisions. The strength with which you strike the string, you could play it like this or like this. Again, I think that they're great guitarists because they are sometimes attacking the string and sometimes very gently almost caressing it. And this is just the beginning of the solo. I'm not going to do the whole solo. The bit where he goes, he plays a fast bend, but he comes down really slowly. If he did every bend exactly the same way, it would be boring quickly. In combining all of these different techniques, he's creating something really impressive. One more thing I'd like to point out in this solo, the bit where he goes, he doesn't play it like, he goes. This bit was actually really difficult to learn because he's muting the string halfway through the bend. So it goes ba 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 da. It makes it a staccato attack more than like a or they're pulling out all the stops. Some staccato, there's some legato, there's some quick bends, there's some slow bends. So a good guitar solo is all about these micro choices about how you inflect certain things. And in that way, it is a lot like singing. You can pronounce words in this way or that way or the other way to make what you're singing sound better and to emphasize different words and different sounds. And you can do the same thing on guitar. So that is what I love about this guitar solo. They make these guitars sing. They're not just playing the notes, they are singing the notes, they are breathing life into them. And then of course the notes themselves are really nice. Well done, Eagles. Beautiful work, A+. Editor Nancy here. It's currently Friday in New Zealand and this episode is not out because I got to the end of all of the footage that I had filmed and realized that I'd gotten so fired up talking about that guitar solo that I completely forgot to close out the episode, so I guess I'm gonna have to do it. If you like this episode or you would like to support any of the weird things that I do, be it prancing around in giant Technicolor wings or constructing extremely time-consuming cardboard home interiors. Nothing is real. I will leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you are welcome to make a donation, but are in no way obliged. No pressure, friends. Thank you to everybody who has made a contribution to my Buy Me a Coffee page. You are part of the reason this show is possible, so I really appreciate you. Thanks for your support. That's it from me. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! I've got blisters on my fingers.